Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Seattle Kingdome in Seattle, Washington for another edition of the United States Hot Rod Association's Mud Racing and Monster Truck National Championship Series, all brought to you by Camel. I'm Brett Kebner, and along with Kelly O'Neill, we'll be presenting one of the first of these new Camel Mud and Monster National Championship Series events here today. And indeed, this should be a killer, Kelly.
That's right, Brett. We're looking forward to some really exciting action tonight. The fans are really excited, and we're ready for things to get underway.
Well, that's for sure, Kelly. We've got an incredible lineup of mud racing and monster truck superstars here for one of the very first of the new Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck Series events that culminates in a $100,000 points fund at the end of the 1990 season. In fact, earlier, Kelly had a chance to talk to one of the gentlemen certainly partly responsible for this incredible new series, Larry Kiger, one of the team managers for Camel's racing efforts.
With me is Larry Kiger. Larry is the team manager for Camel Mud and Monster Racing Series. And Larry, the drivers are really excited about Camel being the new sponsor for the series this year, and the fact that there's a $100,000 purse up for grabs. What made Camel decide to get into mud and monster racing?
We feel like the timing was right with the competition at the level it is now. We feel like with the interjection of our sponsorship that we can raise that level of competition even further with the teaming of SRO PACE and the United States Hot Rod Association as our sanctioning body. We feel like it's a can't-miss team and a can't-miss situation, so we're just very, very happy to be part of the sport.
Well, as I said before, there is a $100,000 purse up for grabs, and this is based on a point system. Can you tell us how that point system, how do you feel it's going to affect the series this year?
Yes, the Camel Mud and Monster Series in 1990 has posted a $100,000. $50,000 will be awarded in the monster truck category. $25,000 will be awarded in our series long competition in the mud racing category. At each venue, we will award $1,000 to the fastest mud racer in what is going to be called the Camel Shootout competition, and we feel like that's going to add quite a bit of excitement to an already exciting class of mud racing.
Well, Larry, we are very happy to be affiliated with Camel, and we are all looking forward to the most exciting year yet in mud and monster racing.
Well, this event should indeed prove to be one of the biggest and best of this brand new U.S. Hot Rod Association Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck Tour, and Kelly will be kicking it off in just a minute.
That's right, Brett, so stay with us, because coming up next is the qualifying rounds for monster trucks here in the Seattle Kingdome. Don't go away.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Seattle Kingdome in Seattle, Washington, as we prepare to kick things off at this edition of the U.S. Hot Rod Association's Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck National Championship Series. Kelly, it looks like we're ready for monster truck qualifying.
That's right. We start off the qualifying action with Gary Sarton in the Skull Bandit, and running along with him is Randy Lynn in the Hot Tempered Jeep. And this is Randy's first time out, and of course we'd like to mention that it is a lady, so a lot of the lady fans are really standing behind her and hoping she does a good job.
It'll be interesting to see how the new racer does in the brand new Jeep Monster machine. And of course, Gary Sarton with the Skull Bandit, always one of the toughest on the national event tour. Now we're qualifying for 8 available positions here in this one-shot qualifying round. This is the only chance they'll get to place themselves in the field. You have to wonder what Randy Lynn is thinking about in front of her hometown fans, the Aberdeen, Washington lady looking up against one of the toughest there in the other lane. The green flag drops, and look at Sarton drive away. Tremendous air, a little bit of a rough landing as Randy Lynn finally makes it over the cars. Kelly, I'd say Randy was taking a little bit conservative there.
Yeah, definitely a disappointing run for Randy there, and especially in front of the hometown fans. Thought it would be a little bit rough.
Well, she was more concerned with doing things properly during this qualifying round than going out and getting a little too radical. Gary Sarton, the Skull Bandit, receives an elapsed time of 4.20 seconds, and the big black Chevrolet from the Los Angeles, California area indeed is one of the favorites coming into this event. You know, Gary Sarton is no newcomer to this particular sport. He's won several U.S. Hot Rod Association national event titles, and on this particular hit, as the first man out in qualifying, Gary puts it way up in the air. That's not necessarily something you want to do, Kelly, during this type of competition. Look at that landing.
Well, flying through the air like that is definitely not good for times, but it does make some exciting action for the fans.
Exactly. It's a very, very spectacular maneuver, but of course, the closer you can keep the machine to the ground, the quicker your elapsed time is going to be. Sarton will be probably happy with that 4.20 second elapsed time, while the lady from Aberdeen, Washington receives a 7.70 second clocking. Well, here's a guy who will definitely be trying to put on a show in front of the hometown fans, Kelly. Jeff Baintner out of Yakima, Washington. We've seen him a bunch of times on ESPN's coverage of U.S. Hot Rod Association Camel events, and he is definitely notorious for his craziness.
Yeah, Jeff is in the high voltage Jeep, and this ought to be really exciting. He gets a little crazy.
He debuted this car at a particular event of the U.S. Albert Association Tour in 1989 in Oklahoma City. As a matter of fact, in that debut, it won. Look at this thing leave the starting line, actually carrying the wheels. Tremendous air for Boehner, and what a landing, as the crowd loves every minute of that one. An excellent, excellent pass. In fact, a lot quicker than I think Kelly people thought he was going to go. You can see the machine actually pick the front wheels up on the starting line launch, and when he hits the first set of cars, tremendous amount of air. And as always, that short wheelbase Jeep comes down a little sideways, and those tires just send it back up over and over on every attempt at landing. What a ride. And the elapsed time, 3.76 seconds. That's going to be incredibly tough to beat.
Next up in line is Taurus. He's driven by Kirk Frankish, and he's from Canada. And he's been around for a long time. Should be an exciting run.
It's true, he just purchased this truck from the Willman family in Illinois. This is one of the original heavyweight Tauruses, 15,000 pounds plus for this Chevrolet. And you can see that Frankish decides to keep it a little bit slower, a little bit more conservative, to keep that nose on the ground. And when he hits the first set of cars, you won't see that much air underneath these tires, and that's the objective here, to try and improve on the elapsed time. And considering that Frankish knows that he's probably going to be able to qualify if he just plays the cards right, he doesn't have to push this machine yet. And when he does in eliminations, it's going to be a wilder ride because of the weight. The elapsed time, 5.61 seconds, should put the Calgary, Alberta racer into the field.
Coming up next, we've got Hot Stuff. This is driven by Todd Blazer, and Todd is from Milwaukee.
Now, that particular Jeep is Jeff Boehner's old Hot Stuff Jeep. This is the machine that you saw him so many times on ESPN's coverage last year of U.S. Albert Association events. Blazer is brand new. Used to be a crew chief for several monster truck teams out of California. He makes his solo effort. A lot of air there, but a beautiful job landing that thing. I'll tell you what, that was definitely a crossed-up situation at the end of the cars, and this rookie, his first year of competition, may have just put down a statement about his driving skills. Tell you what, very seldom do you see a brand new driver come out and handle a situation like that. In fact, very seldom do you see a brand new driver come out and take chances like that. You'll see on this slow motion replay of the first hit that he was definitely not light-footing it. Tremendous amount of air, and there's that Jeep tendency with the torque of the engine to drop the left front side of the car first. And indeed, when it comes down on one corner, you're in for a ride. He manages to control it perfectly.
He should be real happy with this. He got 4.99 on his elapsed time, so he should definitely be pleased.
I wouldn't be surprised if that held up to one of the top 4 spots.
Coming up next online is Warren Davis in Barefoot.
Again, Warren Davis is driving a relatively new machine for him. The big Barefoot Chevrolet is one of the heavier ones out there as well. And he again takes a very, very conservative approach, but that's pretty much what you want to do in this situation. It's one thing to go out and put on a show for the fans, but it's another to qualify for one of these Camel Mud Monster Series events. And indeed, if you want to get into the program, you're going to take it easy. And you can see the starting line launch was definitely nowhere near under full power. In fact, it almost sounded like there might have been a fuel delivery problem. But Davis, so far, as the straightest line down this 150-foot course. You can see a little bit of engine misfiring there in the exhaust headers coming up through the hood. There was some fuel delivery problems on that run.
And he should be happy with this time, though. 4.85 for Warren Davis in Barefoot.
I'll tell you what, if that truck can run that fast even with engine problems, he's going to be somebody to contend with during actual eliminations. Considering that truck is so heavy, Warren Davis, the new Montana pilot of the Barefoot Chevy, should be tough. Here's a guy that's been around for a long time.
Up next online is Monster Mash. This is Mike Welch, and he's from Washington also. This is going to be interesting. Looks pretty heavy.
It is heavy. As a matter of fact, he's done everything he can to lighten it up, but you can see even on that starting line launch that the Chevrolet power plant in this early model Ford is still lacking just a little bit compared to some of the new supercharged fuel-injected motors. And as you can see, he takes this machine over the course basically in the kind of fashion that he was looking for. I think that Mike Welch's biggest concern at this event is going to be consistency. I think he'll probably take the course as evenly and as conservatively as he can even during competition, but he's going to be trying to save the equipment. Now you'll watch when he hits the cars, he gets the front end up enough to land about the third car down, and then he reapplies the throttle, takes it through very evenly.
Monster Mash had, though, a disappointing elapsed time. It was 6.62. But what do you expect for something quite that heavy?
That's true. We're talking about an honest 18,000-pound vehicle, and if it gets him in the program, it's going to be good enough to qualify.
That's all it takes. Coming up next is everybody's favorite. This is Bigfoot, driven by Gene Patterson. This is always one that the crowd loves to watch.
I'll tell you what, Bob Chandler's Bigfoot team from St. Louis, Missouri is definitely intent on winning that $100,000 pot at the end of the rainbow for the 1990 Camel Mud Monster Series. This is Bigfoot number 7, but it's received a few innovations recently, exceptionally powerful new motor, and indeed Patterson is certainly one of the best drivers in Bob Chandler's stable. Watch for Patterson to make a picture-perfect run here, trying to keep this truck low to the ground. Leaves the starting line. Nice leap. A little bit rougher landing than I think Patterson probably would have liked, and that actually may have slowed the elapsed time a little bit. In fact, it may not be enough to threaten Jeff Maintner's 3.76-second leader.
It's not a bad run, though. He didn't see much air.
I'll tell you, the initial hit was just about perfect. It was the landing, the actual landing of the truck near the very last car that sent the machine into a bounce that kept Patterson from reapplying the power that he needed to pick up the elapsed time. Watching the slow motion replay, the hit perfect. The truck still basically level. He comes down nicely, but the landing, actually hitting the butt of the landing ramp was the problem. Puts the machine up in the air several times, and he goes across the finish line a little bit slower than he certainly would have hoped.
And he probably isn't going to be quite as happy as he could have been with this one. It's elapsed time 5.49.
Well, believe it or not, it looks like Jeff Maintner and the high-voltage G from Yakima may end up #1 qualifier in this field.
That would definitely be exciting for the fans here in Washington. Stay with us. We've got more exciting action coming up for you. The super modified mud racers are up next.
Attention, monster.
Back to the U.S. Hot Rod Association's Mud and Monster Racing Championships here in the Seattle Kingdome. Brett, we've seen some really exciting action here tonight.
I'll tell you, the monster truck battles, it seems like everything has gone pretty much according to plan.
Okay, online now we have the #1 qualifier, Jeff Maintner, in high voltage against Bigfoot, one of everyone's favorites.
Like we said, this was a good news, bad news situation for that man right there, Jeff Maintner. He qualifies #1 in front of his hometown audience, and now he has to race Bigfoot in the very first round. If he could pull off a defeat of the Big Blue Ford, it would be the biggest single moment of his life. He's already had so many incredible situations on our ESPN coverage of these events that he's already becoming almost a household name, despite his lack of very many national event wins, to be honest. In the meantime, the Bigfoot team is ready for blood on this one. Checking each driver, they're ready. They leave the line. Bigfoot with an early lead. Look at Maintner. Unbelievable. Look at this driving job. Absolutely incredible. Stopping within inches of the wall. The crowd can't believe it, and rightfully so. He actually pulled it off, Kelly. He beats Bigfoot in the opening round.
Brett, Jeff has to be ecstatic about that.
Who couldn't be? Like, when you can drive around Bigfoot on the slow motion replay, you can see that Bigfoot left the starting line first with an honest 5-foot advantage going into the on-ramp. Here you see Bigfoot take it to the air. Maintner on the other side was even higher, but indeed took one of the rougher landings ever. As you can see, Gene Patterson actually had a beautiful, beautiful run here. A little bit of a bounce there at the finish line, though, putting him on his side, but I think he was steering away from Jeff Maintner more than anything else.
And elapsed time on that of 4.50 seconds. That was an excellent run for Bigfoot, but Jeff Maintner was taking the ride of his life in the other lane.
Look at this thing leave the starting line. Wheels up like a dragster leaving the line. Now, when he hits the ramp, watch this thing take to the air. You want altitude? Take a look at this. Flash bulbs go off around the Kingdome. Now watch this landing. Every bit of weight of this vehicle on the right front tire. Maintner almost noses the thing over. He actually pulled the right rear tire completely off the rim. Same thing with the left side on the second bounce. Still up on one tire as he tries to get to the brakes. Like I said, the brakes don't do you any good when the machine's in the air. He stops it within inches of the wall. How close was it?
An unbelievably close race with Jeff Maintner having a time of 4.38 seconds. Just 0.12 of a second faster than Bigfoot. Online now we have Barefoot and Monster Mash, the apt name for this truck.
Mike Wells, the Washington veteran, over in the far lane. And of course, Warren Davis out of Montana in the Barefoot Chevrolet. Both of these are big-time heavyweights. Big advantage in the horsepower department, though, goes to the blue Chevrolet. The yellow Monster Mash entry utilizing basically a single 4-barrel carbureted Chevrolet power plant that's putting about 700 horsepower out, and there you see the difference. Warren Davis just drives away from Mike Welsh. I'll tell you what, the landing ramp on this track, if you don't hit it perfectly, you're going to slam the nose down hard enough that it's going to send you airborne in a bounce. I'll tell you, Mike Welsh has fans. Look at the people in the stands behind him cheering him on. It just was not to be here at the Seattle Kingdome on this particular run. Mike takes it across the cars, like I said earlier, in conservative fashion. It was nothing compared to this radical approach. It looks like Warren Davis may have figured out those fuel delivery problems that were plaguing him during qualifying. His qualifying elapsed time, as a matter of fact, of 4.85 seconds may have fallen here, but look at these bounces. Again, if you don't hit that landing ramp just right, if you bring the rear tires up off the ground before the nose comes down, you will find yourself in a tricky situation here.
He definitely had a rough ride of 5.21 seconds, but it was good enough to beat Monster Mash.
Here we're looking at one of the more unusual innovations in this sport, neon tubes that carry the electrical charge to the spark plugs in Randy Lynn's hot-tempered Jeep, Kelly.
Running alongside Randy is Todd Blazer in his Hot Stuff Jeep.
I remember we talked about Todd being a rookie. This is, believe it or not, both these drivers' first season of racing. And very seldomly you see side-by-side Jeep. Blazer leaves the starting line and starts train lengthening the Aberdeen, Washington lady. If nothing else, she manages to keep it under control, trying to drive around Todd in the shutdown area, but at that point, the Wisconsin youngster had it under control.
Really was no contest there. Looks like Randy went for quite a bumpy ride.
Actually, it was surprising that she managed to put that much power into that machine. Like I said, her game plan at the start of this event, this being her first, was to take it easy, be very conservative, plan on the other driver making mistakes, and try to take advantage of that. As you can see, she knows what she's doing behind the wheel of this thing. Perfectly straight over the cars, does a good job without getting too much air, getting too radical. The only problem is that Todd Blazer got to the finish line long before she did.
She had an elapsed time there of 6.97 seconds.
Which, surprisingly, was an improvement from her qualifying effort of almost a second, so at least she's moving up. Here's Todd Blazer on his initial hit. This young man at the wheel of the truck that basically took Jeff Painter to stardom last year in the U.S. Hobbit Association's National Event Tour. You see him coming off the side of the landing ramp down there. That's something we didn't pick up at first. He does an excellent job of controlling this. Like I said, in qualifying, this young man knows exactly how to handle this extremely ill-handling Jeep.
And his elapsed time was 6.19 seconds. A nice ride there for Todd. Continuing the action now with Taurus. This is driven by Kurt Frankish of Canada. And he's always tough to beat.
Well, like I said, he's going to have to come up with some serious power to dethrone this man. This incredible machine, Gary Sargent's Skull Bandit, has been extremely strong, qualified in the #2 spot behind Jeff Painter. And one thing about Gary Sargent, Kelly, he is not afraid to put this thing into orbit if he has to get around the opponent.
Looks like we'll be seeing some great action in this one.
Saw him during qualifying put this thing literally 10 feet in the air. The Skull Bandit in the far lane moves it up. The Taurus entry out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, ready for the drop of the flag. Sargent gets the advantage and starts driving away from there, landing almost on the landing ramp itself. Sargent manages to keep it under control, manhandling the truck after only one hard bounce. Take a look at this. This machine definitely flew over those cars. At that point, the Taurus machine was nowhere in sight. Look at this launch, the landing coming down 2 cars from the end. He actually hits it right on the crown of the landing ramp. A huge power stand as he gets back into the throttle, but after only one bounce, Kelly, he settles that thing down.
That's right, Brett. He had an incredible run of 4.53 seconds.
That is certainly one of the quickest of eliminations so far. You really can't fault Kurt Frankish in the other lane. Again, using the conservatism that we talked about at the very beginning of the event, hoping that Sargent would make an error of some kind. He did not. He also had a pretty rough ride down there at the finish line. He did a beautiful job of regaining control of this thing. Superb driving by Gary Sargent in the Skull Bandit. He is looking exceptional in this event, but I think the crowd is still riding the emotional high of hometown boy Jeff Painter beating Bigfoot in the very first round. That was indescribable.
Definitely some exciting action. Also, we have just received word that super modified mud racer Ken Tobin, he had the fire in his Deja Vu earlier in qualifying rounds, is going to be able to compete coming up. Welcome back to the U.S. Hot Rod Association's Mud and Monster Truck Racing Championships here in the Seattle Kingdome. It's time now for the finals of the monster action. It's going to be exciting.
That's true, and Gary Sargent looks so good in the Skull Bandit. Even though Warren Davis has managed to cure his fuel delivery problems in Barefoot, he's going to have to really come up with something to get around that incredible black Chevrolet from California.
We've got the Skull Bandit online, and Barefoot should be a good race.
Yeah, I really don't think there's any partiality with the crowd at all either. I think they're about 50% rooting for one, 50% for the other. Side by side on the cars, absolutely perfect race, and Kelly, I don't think anybody could call that one. Our event director on the floor, George Carpenter, is probably watching the slow motion replay himself. Here we see they leave the starting line dead even. Barefoot pulls up on the ramp, then Sargent drives around in the air. Here comes Davis in Barefoot as Sargent wheel stands again. They are absolutely side by side. Our event director, George Carpenter from the U.S. Hobbit Association, will have to make the decision based on a videotape replay. That's the official way it goes, Kelly. At U.S. Hobbit Association Racing, if it's too close to call visually, they use a videotape camera mounted directly at the finish line to call the winner. We'll just have to wait for the word.
Well, even watching the slow motion replay, I cannot tell who won that race. Brett, this is a real tribute to the sportsmanship of these drivers to go back and run this race again.
The flag drops again, side by side. Sarton, though, drives away for a full truck-length victory at the finish line. What a top-end charge Gary Sarton has in that machine. The crowd obviously going crazy, and Sarton himself says, hey, what did you expect? The Skull Bandit team picks up the victory here at the Seattle Kingdome as the crowd gives both drivers literally a standing ovation. The helmet comes off. What a battle.
Gary Sarton was able to pull it off. That was incredible action like we've never seen before.
Never seen before. We've never had a dead heat like that in monster truck racing. Despite how incredible this particular event was, we'll be back in just a minute to take a look at how the points race is shaping up for that $100,000 bounty at the end of the 1990 season for the Camel, Mud, and Monster Series. We'll be back to take a look at who's number one and who's not. Stay with us. Welcome back. With action concluded here at the Seattle Kingdome in Seattle, Washington, the U.S. Hot Rod Association's Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck National Event Series has already kicked off to a big start. Down on the floor of the Kingdome right now, my partner Kelly O'Neill is talking to the winners, Gary Sarton and, of course, Ken Tobin.
With me is Gary Sarton. Gary is the driver of the Skull Bandit, and it was some exciting action tonight, Gary. In the first heat, you had an absolute photo finish. No one could tell who was the winner, so you decided to run the race again. Explain to me, why did you do that?
Well, we wanted to, the crowd couldn't tell, and we didn't want to leave them hanging with just a tie. And me and the driver of Barefoot, we'd feel better if we knew who won too. So we ran it again, and I come out on top.
Well, thank you, Kelly. After the first brand new U.S. Hot Rod Association Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck National Championship Series, the point standings for that $100,000 chase are already up for grabs. Take a look at the monster truck standings, and you'll see Bob Chandler's Bigfoot team with 398 points. In the number 2 spot is Chuck Hawkins, the guy they call Psycho, right behind him at 391, with Rob Fuchs, the 1989 Rookie of the Year, and the First Blood Ford in 3rd at 382 points. In the U.S. Hot Rod, $100,000 up for grabs. This season is not going to get any easier for any of these competitors, and indeed this battle should turn into all-out war before the end of the season, Kelly.
I look forward to a really good year.
Tell you what, it's going to be incredible, and we will be there. In fact, the next event you'll be seeing from the U.S. Hot Rod Association Camel Mud and Monster National Championship Series will be from Anaheim, California, and it promises to be just as tough a battle as the one we saw here tonight at the Seattle Kingdome. On behalf of myself, Brett Kepner, and of course Kelly O'Neill, thanks for being with us. The action will get wilder. We'll see you next from Anaheim, California. Thanks for being with us.